Hello and welcome to the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update from Sierra Madre Gold and Silver. Sierra Madre is traded on the TSXV under the ticker SM and on the OTCQX under the ticker SMDRF. I'm joined today with the president and CEO of Sierra Madre Gold and Silver, Alex Langer. And Alex, great to get you back on the show. We were remarking off mic. It's been since December since we've had you on for an update, so an overdue interview here where we just find out how the operations are going at the Lagatara Mine. You have a whole mining complex here that you purchased from First Majestic a couple of years back in 2023, and this just went into test mining last summer, and then you were ramping up towards commercial production by the beginning of just this year. So when we're looking back at your Q4 numbers that you put out and your full year numbers 2024 just on April the 22nd, just for some context, this is not things running at a full clip. Now, the production did get up to 500 tons per day by the end of December, which is kind of the target for the mill. But dig in under the hood here for us, Alex, and give us a sense of how things went in Q4 and the full year and just kind of where things are at, and then we'll get into where things are going.
Sounds great, Chad. And yeah, happy to give you an update and always happy to chat. So thanks for having me back on. As you mentioned, 2024 was a full test mining period still. We had about 6 months of production. We started at 275 tons per day throughput, 325, went up to 400, 450, and then we ended the year at 500 tons per day, which is the nameplate capacity of the mill. Even within that time, in 2024, we generated over $6.5 million US in net revenues, which is quite amazing, especially for a little mine. We can thank the silver and gold prices for that, which we will. But we did see a steady increase, monthly increase every step of the way in terms of revenues and what the amount of silver and gold we were generating. And that's really continued through to early 2025 as well. We had a gross profit of 1.36 million for the year of 2024. That was about 236,000 in quarter three and the million plus in quarter four. So we're seeing that growth. I think our current assets grew about $500,000 US as well. So that's really positive. So everything is going in the right direction. I would say that our mill is running at full capacity, but we're still doing development. So we have quite a few extra costs. That's from the underground and developing to new phases. And we're seeing that, as well into quarter one. But as we progress now to quarter two, I think we'll be fully caught up by the end of quarter two. So it's quite exciting for us. I think one other really important feature is only 22% of the material we processed in 2024 came from the resource that we issued at the end of 2023. So a lot of the material we found was from doing development, finding new veins and new material and processing that material, especially today's silver and gold prices. We're able to actually make money processing that material. And then some of it came from, I believe we chatted about it before, retaques, which is former waste rock from the mine, which is fairly high grade material. We have about 350,000 tons of that material. So we processed a bit of that, a bit of fresh mineralization, and then about 22% from the resource that came out in 2023.
That's actually amazing that you can do that you can find all these other waste piles and other sources of ore where you're only basically grabbing about 1/5, or you only to this point in time grabbed about 1/5 of the material from the actual resources. So everything else has been coming from other areas. But you mentioned as you get into development, you're getting more into the fresh rock. Talk to us about the development work underway. Are you trying to open up more stopes, or give us a little more color around the development work you're still doing to get up to full capacity here?
Yeah, no, it takes time. And we've been able to do it completely out of cash flows as well. So when we did start test mining, we did have a bit of a shoestring budget. We were really able to pretty much cover our costs. Like the fact that we only lost $38,000 in quarter four is amazing. That includes all the overhead, our insurance, our lease fees, legal, exchange fees, everything like that. It was only a $38,000 loss. And that was even just during test mining. So we've been quite fortunate with that. And at the same time, we were really doing a lot of development. So usually what happens when a mine does shut down, you don't do a lot of development because you're shutting it down and you'll just catch up down the road. So we've had to do that over the last number of months. And as I mentioned earlier, we're almost completely caught up. So we're probably at about 20 to 28 working phases right now, which is great. We do want to get up to above 30, 35 So we're still pushing through. People will be able to see that in our next quarter as well, quarter one financials, which should be out kind of mid-May, that we're still catching up on development, but we're almost there. So again, I would say by the end of June, development will be fully done. At least we'll be caught up, and then it'll be standard development moving forward. So yeah, it's all kind of coming together. It's a great mine. First Majestic left it in amazing shape. So for us, it's just really catching up with the development. And we did start production earlier than expected. Traditionally, you would do a lot of that development before you would start production. But with the silver and gold prices, it made a lot of sense to just get it to cash flows and catch up on development after that started.
Well, and let's talk a little about that. Well, I know that you modeled it lower than where metals prices are today, but give people listening a sense of the defensive side of this, where the modeling was done for the gold price and the silver price. And just a reminder that in addition to the silver, you do have a nice gold component here. So how have these higher metals prices enabled you to maybe move quicker than you're expecting?
Yeah, so we run our models internally at about $22 silver and $1,800 gold. And obviously, we're well north of that right now. So it's been amazing. We've been really fortunate. We've been able to do all the extra development out of cash flows. We've actually started to buy a bunch of new equipment as well. We had a large rental fleet. Again, we started with as low CapEx number as we could. So we're starting to buy, kind of turning over that rental fleet into our own fleet as well. And we're able to do that out of cash flows. And it's been really, really helpful with the pricing of silver and gold. Now, traditionally, this mine was, I don't know, 65% silver value, 35% gold, kind of that 35-to-1 gold ratio historically. But today, like if you look at our quarters, majority of the revenue actually came from gold, about 52-48, and could be a little bit higher than that right now. And we've seen gold really, run a bit further than silver has. So our silver mine's kind of turned into a bit of a gold mine, but it is 100% precious metal. So silver goes up, great. Gold goes up, great. I think what we're seeing, at least we chatted about it earlier, is gold coming off a little bit today and silver kind of catching up. So either way, we're thrilled, we're happy, we get paid on both of those precious metals.
Well, and over time, I think people will see through all the other projects, you still have quite a bit of silver exposure here on the land package for exploration, but also for development work. We'll get into that, but I also just want to talk about how it looks on a time frame for ramping up the mill to expansion over the next 2, 3 years. We had talked a little bit last time, Alex, that there's some simple things you can do to expand to 650 to, let's say, 750 tons per day. And then there's more equipment and a little bit more that you'd have to do to the mill to get it up to 1,000 tons per day. But just in a very brief sense, what would that look like? What would the timeline look like to go past 500 tons per day and even ramp it up further?
Perfect. As a reminder, the mill is rated at about 504 tons per day is what we're producing. Now, the largest bottleneck we have at the plant is the ball mill capacity. We do have three ball mills. One's about 220 tons per day. The other one is 200 tons per day. And then the third one is smaller, 80 to 90 tons per day. So that gives you that 500 or so number. So the plan is to actually purchase a new ball mill. We'd look at probably buying one that's around 400 tons per day. There's actually space for it there. There's power and everything you would need to kind of drop it in. It would cost us about $1 million to $1.5 million US to add a 400 ton per day ball mill. That would alleviate the bottleneck on the ball mill level. The next bottleneck is going to be the crushing circuit. The crushing circuit's good for about 640 as it stands right now. So if we added in just a ball mill, as I explained earlier, for about $1.5 million US, that would get us up to about 640 tons per day. So close to 30% increase in throughput. The plan is once we have about 3 million in excess revenues that we have on our balance sheet, that's probably the first thing we would do with that capital is look to expand the plant. We'd spend about $1.5 million to add a new ball mill, and then also $1.5 million to add a concentrator for the paste backfill plant that we'd like to build. That would allow us to start putting some of the tailings back underground. There's about 50 kilometers of underground tunnels at Lagatara, so it's very cost effective, saves also our tailing space outside as well, and that would drop our costs. So once we have about 3 million in free cash flow, we'll start to build that. And if all goes well, I would expect us, to be in a position to do that in quarter 4 of this year, at least to start that process. So that's kind of step one. And then from there, the next bottleneck is the crushing circuits. So we'd add a secondary cone crusher. Again, it's something that's not overly expensive. Very similar to what you'd find if you're building like a road. You'd have a little side cone crusher breaking down the rocks a little bit further. With that, we think we can get up to about 750 tons per day. And then finally, if we did want to get up to 1,000 tons per day, we'd have to double the full crushing circuit. There's space for it again. We'd have to add a new jaw crusher. But rough estimates are 4 to 5 million US. So again, not a huge amount of capital outlay. There's power and there's space for it. And if all goes well, we'd like to get to about 1,000 tons per day towards the end of 2027. So not too far away, but we do want to walk before we run. And again, just as a reminder, our flotation cells are actually good for 1,200 tons per day. So the two bottlenecks are the ball mills and then the crushing circuit. And again, not a huge amount of capital to get us up to that point.
Okay. Well, and so it'll happen in the fullness of time. I just wanted to map that out for folks because it doesn't necessarily need to stay at 500 tons per day for perpetuity. You're going to be able to ramp this up over the next 2, 3 years, and you'll see that with maybe a max out at 1,000 tons per day at Lagatara. But Lagatara, you're not a one-trick pony here, Alex. You've got other mines that are historic mines and other exploration targets on your district scale property. I'd like to highlight the Colosso Mine because that's another mine where First Majestic did a lot of work. I think you mentioned on our last show that there's even Wi-Fi underground at this mine, that it's in pretty good shape. And it's another area where you could bring in production into the mix in the not too distant future. So maybe talk to us about Colosso waiting in the wings.
Yeah, Colosso is, I guess, a new mine that First Majestic commissioned in 2013, and they ran that all the way until care and maintenance in 2018. It's about 4 kilometers away from Lagatara, overland. It is a very modern facility. Huge adits, huge tunnels, really great accessibility. And as I mentioned, there was Wi-Fi there when I went previously. We'd have to add that again. But I remember on the one site visit, the break rooms there, even the fridges were still cold. So it's in amazing shape. We'd always planned to bring that area online towards the end of 2025, so in a number of months. What's great about Colosso is the grade. It is really, really, really high grade. It's some of the highest grade material we do have within that 2023 resource, up to about 350 grams silver equivalent, which is extraordinary high grade. It's more than double the Lagatara mineralization. So the earlier we can bring that online, the better. We'd look at probably, maybe getting a third from Colosso and then 2/3 from Lagatara and have a kind of a blending situation, which would, get our grades up as well. So, we looked at that. The shape of the mine right now is excellent. So we could have news on that a little bit sooner than before the end of the year, which would definitely help with everything we're doing and increase cash flows quite aggressively as well.
Yeah, I think you guys have shown you have a history of moving a little bit faster than your timelines, which is rare in the mining sector. Normally it's pushbacks in time and cost overruns. You guys have actually been doing things coming in under budget and ahead of schedule. So it's just nice to see. And then even in that area by Colosso, there's another previous historic mine, Nazareno, that down the road could still be further fuel for it. So you have some material there that you could feed that mine for some time. Also speak briefly that you have a tailings project, and I know that's not a now thing, but it's another value opportunity for the company if down the road you were to get the permitting for cyanide to do the leaching of the tailings. So maybe just talk about how that's more resources that you could tap down the road.
Yeah, so we do have a large tailing facility there as well. It's in great shape. There's been a number of feasibility studies done on the tailings potential as well. And for us, it would only make sense if we were to get a cyanide permit. Right now at 500 tons per day, even at 640 if we do move up towards the end of the year. We're getting really good gold recoveries, we're getting great silver recoveries, and we're able to sell the concentrate, which has gone really, really well. So if we were to get a cyanide permit, it would increase obviously mainly the gold recoveries, but it would allow us to reprocess some of those tailings. So the advantage there, it's not a huge money maker, but it would also open up quite a bit of space. We currently have a wet tailings facility. So what we'd be able to do is reprocess these tailings and then move those to a dry stack facility, which would give us an extra couple of years in the current tailings facility, which would almost more than benefit the recoveries we would get on the gold side. So there's a couple of things. It's never been applied for in terms of cyanide. It's something, we would like to do down the road, but there's no rush and there's no, impetus for us to do that right away. But it's a nice to have. There's no guarantee we'd ever get it, but it's something that we're, discussing, at least in the background.
Yeah, just thought I'd highlight it as it's another lever you could pull down the road. And the permitting situation in Mexico is changing in a positive way. So maybe something you can look at maybe a couple years out, but it's just another set of resources on the property that you could monetize. And like you say, it's advantageous for the tailings itself just to be able to open up more capacity and move some of that to dry stack tailings. So let's shift over to the big vision for the company, which is the exploration upside on this land package. You got a lot of other targets here that have historic mines or areas of interest where there's been historic drilling. Two that come to mind are that you have the El Rincon area and the Mina de Agua. But just talk to us about the exploration upside on this package and how you want to bootstrap your way by growing organically through production to feed into that exploration strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lagatara, at least the mine, it's a district. We truly feel it's one of the largest undeveloped silver districts in all of Mexico. It's 25,000 hectares, so really, really large. It costs us about $1 million a year just to hold a land package since it is so large and prolific. And it's fairly rare that a junior of our size would hold a whole district like this. You'd probably find two or three, maybe even four juniors sharing a land package of this size, especially with, 8 or 9 former mines at site. Again, very lucky that First Majestic held this for such a long time that they're able to keep the whole package together. And it's honestly why we bought the project. Love the quick to production scenario, especially with the price of silver and gold moving. I think it was the right decision to move into production quickly. But we really do believe in the exploration potential of the project. And those two former mines that you mentioned, Mina de Agua and El Rincon, I think are two of the most exciting projects or exploration projects we have there. Mina de Agua was massive. 10,000 people working there at one point. There's old photos there with, thousands of workers and a huge facility. The town itself, where we are, it's a mining town, and it really was Mina de Agua that grew it. That mine shut down in 1910. They got a little bit too deep, it flooded. And back then, there was no way of dewatering the mine, so it had just shut down. There's been very little, if not no exploration work done since then. And then El Rincon as well. El Rincon, I really like. That one shut down in 1930. Again, they got a little bit too deep and it flooded. But the head grades over the last 10 years of operations at El Rincon were 6.5 grams gold and 860 grams silver. So some of the highest grades I've ever seen. It was a 100-ton per day facility back then, and there's no reason why we couldn't, look for some of that material and even start processing it relatively, in the future. Nothing in the near term. But First Majestic realized this as well, and we have a lease agreement on a large piece of land there. It actually has a MIA as well, so it has an environmental permit. So we can start mining from that area. We could put it in a drift. If we do find what we think we could find in the number of years moving forward, it would be a great spot to put a much larger mining facility as well. So it gives us a bunch of optionality. We do want to explore there, but I think the rough idea and plan is to increase throughput at Lagatara for the time being. We're able to bring up that material, from 500 to 650 to 750 relatively easily. Continue that, and then once we have a bit more cash flows, then we'd go explore Mina de Agua and El Rincon. We've done a lot of surface work. We've identified now close to 60 kilometers of vein material at surface, which is crazy. It's a lot there. So we're still mapping, we're sampling all the time, getting ready for an eventual drill program. Again, we want to have about 3 million US, I think would give us a really good run at a drilling program. It's very inexpensive to drill in this part of Mexico. Again, road access, probably looking at the high end, maybe $150 a meter all in. So again, not a huge amount. So that 3 million would get us close to 20 to 25,000 meters of drilling, and really an excellent first pass at Mina de Agua and El Rincon before we'd even look to explore some of the other areas as well.
Well, and Alex, you brought up First Majestic. They are key strategic shareholders of the company, and they also let the company have a small loan. And so you're going to be paying that back to First Majestic. Talk to us about the balance of capital management between paying back the loan to First Majestic, investing in exploration, and investing in development, all simultaneously. How will that process go as far as the debt repayment versus investing in growth?
Yeah, no, it was a 2-year term. It's a 5 million US loan at 15%. There's no other features to the debt, which was great. We started to pay back the interest already. So it's simple. It's 62,500 US a month, and we're able to do that out of cash flows right now. But we are starting to be cognizant that we're going to have to pay that back in May of 2026. So we're starting to save that capital to pay it back. So, I would have never taken this loan unless I was very confident we'll be able to pay it back. And, again, expansion plans weren't really in we were going to pay off the loan before you even looked at maybe expanding. But with today's silver and gold prices, things have obviously gone a little bit better than planned. So it is allowing us to think a little bit further ahead and perhaps expanding. So number one is obviously to pay back that loan. I think that's very important. Management and founders, we still own 25%. So any debt, you want to make sure we clear that up before we do expand. But it's looking like we should be in a position to perhaps do both, pay back that loan and expand, especially with the cash flows that are expected in the not too distant future. Again, it's not a huge amount. First Majestic's been amazing to us. They're great shareholders. They own 44.5%. This loan really allowed us to get into production, and now it's starting to pay off, which is great. So definitely cognizant of that. We'll be paying that back. We can pay back early with no penalty as well. But I think there's a fine line there where we're paying back, saving that capital to give back to First Majestic on the loan, and then also looking to expand the mill at the same time.
Yeah, it's nice that we have the backdrop of the higher metals prices because it's probably allowing you to have a little bit more wiggle room, but also accelerate some of the development plans, as you mentioned earlier. So, just as we wrap up, Alex, just let people know, I guess, the key catalyst you want them looking out for. I'm assuming we're not too far away from finding about the Q1 operations, but what else do you have on the docket as far as key news flow that you want people to look forward to?
Yeah, I think, the 2024 year financials were a really good step for us. It was a lot of work. We're going from exploration company now to test mining and now to a full production scenario. So a lot of work on the accounting side. But moving forward, the next big catalyst, I feel, will be the quarter one 2025 financials. That'll really allow people to see that, this is kind of what our cash costs look like. You can extrapolate that out, 4 times to give you what 2025 would look like. I think the numbers will get better every quarter. You'll be able to see that, January was good, February, looks to be better, March even better, April even better. So we're continuing to again catch up development and push that forward. We'll also have some news on, changing over the mine fleet. We've been buying equipment, so we'll be able to tell people, listen, we bought this, this, and this, all out of cash flows, which is a great thing. We'll also drop down our costs as well, going from rental to owning equipment, which is good. And then also perhaps some news on some of the development that we've caught up on and some interesting areas that we're developing. So that should be out in the next little while here. And I also think quarter two will be quite a bit different as well. Quarter one, it'll be more positive. And then once quarter two is over, development should be fully caught up. So quarter three should be even better than that if things continue. Now, that's the one thing we can't control is the price of silver and gold, but at today's price, it's been great. So for us, it's really concentrating on bringing down our cash costs and things like that as much as possible to try to build up as much cash reserves as we can over the short term.
All right. Well, it sounds like a trend of improving quarter after quarter production and revenues and cost as we look ahead. So we'll see how that goes. But I appreciate you breaking down Q4 2024 and the full year, just because it was an interesting transitional year for the company from exploration to test mining to actually mining and producing. And now we're going to have a full year of production out of Lagatara and maybe some complementary efforts from some of the other areas. So we'll keep tabs on it. And we definitely appreciate you coming on to break down how last year went and looking forward to how 2025 is going, Alex. And for those listening in, if you want to get more information on Sierra Madre Gold and Silver, definitely click on the link down in the show notes. It takes you right over to the website, straight to their news section where you can sign up for updates and have them drop in your inbox, or just follow along with the news as it hits the market. Alex, keep us posted. We'll get you back on for an update when you get those Q1 numbers out. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much, Chad.